They say our people were born on the water, but our people had a home, a place, a land, a beginning. They had their own words for love, for friend, for family. They were free. Their story does not begin with whips and chains. No matter what some say, the people fought, and the white people took them anyway, forced them into the bottom of an evil ship to sail to a new world they had no desire to see. Ours is no immigration story. And that is why the people say we were born on the water. And the people who were born on the water survived, kept living and living. Never forget, you come from a people of great strength. Be proud of our story, your story. The 1619 Project, Born on the Water, inspired by the acclaimed reporting of the New York Times Magazine.
Don't even research as much as we should. And I definitely didn't learn about growing up in Texas. And so it's just an honor to be able to, to be able to have that to show people. And that's my little tutorial right there. So we can go into a little bit more in Q&A.
And then I always think it's funny whenever I talk to artists because they're like, hey, I just do a little speech sketch, whoop, whoop, whoop. Like, as if the rest of, meanwhile, the rest of us are like, this is magic, right? Like that was, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I mean, there are so many images. I mean, I have my own favorites, man. And there are some questions I have for you, especially being a Texan, but maybe I'll ask those offline. We'll see. Maybe I won't. Okay. We'll see.
We can get into it.
We might, you know what I mean? But more importantly, I do want to make sure that we talk about this wonderful book. Namrata is here. Before we start, and before I ask you these questions, we got to shout out the homie Renee, who could not make it, but who is the genius. I mean, all of us know Renée Watson. If you don't know Renée Watson,
shout out Renee.
Shout out Renee, one of the best to do it, one of the best in the game, one of the most consistent writers in the game. Like, this is a person who doesn't miss, and this is another example of just a genius. This is 15 poems that are perfect, right? And it's one. So I guess my first question to you Namrata, this is, you're working with Renee, you're working with Nikkolas, you're working with Nikole. I guess my first question is just like, when this comes to you or when this hits your desk, like what are you thinking? I mean, we know what this is about. We know the 1619 Project. Like, how do you wrap your mind around all of this?
Well, first of all, thank you everyone for including me in this conversation. As you said, you're kind of on behalf of representing Renee, because we really wish she could be here, and our thoughts are with her family, because her mother has just passed, and that's why she can't join us. Mm-hmm. And so we just want to send a lot of love to Renee and her family. But it's such a thrill to work on this book, and it's also just like such a thrill to be here with both of you and to get to talk about it. When the project first came in, so it started out with us learning at Kokila that Nikole and the teams at the Times felt like Kokila might be a good home for the children's projects titled 1619 Project. And at that time, we really tried to figure out what's the right format and what's the right team we bring around it, because there's such an expertise that Nikole and everyone at the Times brought to the work, of course. And our work was to be here to help support it from a children's book point of view. And I really felt like, for me as an editor, it's to make a space so that anyone we work with can be free to make their most excellent and most authentic and most honest work. And here it was really about, how do we pair Nikole with someone who has a children's book expertise, who could handle this subject matter. And the first and really only person who came to my mind was Renee. Mm-hmm. Renee and I have been friends for years, and I adore her and I respect her work so tremendously. And it was because both Renee and Nikole have so clearly in their work a deep love and centering of the humanity of the people they talk about, right? There's such a deep centering of the humanity of Black folks, and always really keeping that primary in their work. That is like, I knew that once they chatted, it would be a perfect pairing, and that Renée would bring a lyricism, a sense of like nuance and understanding, especially as a poet, that would work so beautifully in a picture book, because what else is a picture book besides poetry? Right. And then after they met and they really hit it off and we knew they were going to be off to the races, it was about how do you find someone who would be able to partner with this amazing text that we knew we were going to get, because look at the players involved. Right. And our art director, Jasmine Ribeiro, has a particular talent for really finding people who are not just really skilled in their art, but have through their work a demonstrated sort of understanding of and resonance with the work. And it was Nikkolas's background as in his activism as an artivist, as he says, that right away let her know he's the person. And so she said, let's reach out to Nikkolas. We called him up and sort of felt like we could bring the team together. After that, what is our work here? I mean, for me as an editor, it's interesting, you know, Jasmine is Puerto Rican, I'm Indian, neither of us are Black Americans. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like my job was to make the space so that Nikkolas, Renée, and Nikole could do their best work, to remove some of the hurdles that come around production questions, working in the middle of a pandemic, all of those kinds of things, to ask the kinds of questions that might be valuable in just tightening the work, tightening the form, because what I know well is the picture book form and children's books. And really just to make it possible for them, hopefully, to make the kind of book that is of their heart that they would give to their young selves. And from Kokila's point of view, to make a kind of book that maybe they couldn't make anywhere else. If I could do that, then I'd feel like I will have served them and I will have served the ultimate readers. So getting the text in, it was really every time we would see the text or the art, it would be like this moment of discovery and joy for me too. The first time I got the manuscript, first draft of it, it was fall, because I remember it was like early darkness. It was like probably after daylight savings as well, maybe last year. And I was sitting in my apartment on my couch and it was already getting dark. I just remember sitting there like alone in this dark room and getting this text, like this, you know, manuscript arriving on my computer. And I just read it and I wept the first time at the first draft. And I was like, oh, okay, they did the thing. Right. And then it was just, then there was a process of working on it, but it was that thing of just like, how do you actually open yourself up to a text and just try to respond as honestly as you can? And I really tried to balance what I can bring to it and where I needed to get out of the way, because this is not my experience to kind of really speak to.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, Nikkolas, you're an artivist. I mean, for those of you who don't know, this is a person who uses art as a form of activism. What was it like for you to get the call? I always want to ask artists this, then illustrators this, because like every project is different, but there are some projects that are weighted, right? And you get that call and it's like, hey, Nikole Hannah-Jones, you know what I mean? Arguably not even arguably, right? One of the most famous people on the planet, right? And one of the most, arguably one of the most important Americans on the planet, right? You get the call. Hey, we got this book, boop, boop, boop. What do you do? You say yes, obviously, but what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like I'm pinching myself. I'm thinking, first of all, I mean, it's like Nikole and Renée, so like legendary. But then it's like, this is a book about slavery. Like, can you illustrate for everyone, young and old, like what happened in the most, historic and monumental and tragic time ever for most Black people, right. Something that we live with daily. Like, this is a book about something that we live with every day. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the magnitude of it. It's just like, how am I even gonna, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but yes, let's do it. So yeah, obviously, yes. But then also like the art that I do, it is artivism, and it is always trying to hold up a mirror to our society and what's going on. And also it's trying to inspire people to make a positive change and find that broken bone in the world. Like, what is that thing that's not working right that needs to be fixed? And this topic is like one of the biggest broken bones that we deal with and are still dealing with, and people don't want to deal with it, and which is why we're still dealing with it. And so it was, I would say like it was the perfect match for my vision, the art that I do, my style of art. Namrata, you and Jasmine were like so wonderful through the whole process. And it wasn't like, you know, tailor your art, like make it kiddie or change it in this way. It was just like, do your thing, like do you. And I'm so grateful for that. And so it was just like, it felt like a perfect match.
Let's talk about tone. I'm always fascinated when it comes to these books, specifically books around slavery and tone. And this is gonna be a question from you, Namrata. Like this could go bad, right? Like, and we know this, we've seen it. We've been in this industry, we've seen it, right? Like this could go bad very easily. And I guess I want to ask, how did you sort of walk the line when it comes to tone? Because the one thing that we don't want is to traumatize children. And it's really easy to traumatize children with this particular kind of book if you get it wrong, right? And so I guess I want to ask, and I'll ask this to you too, Nikkolas, after, but like, what was it? How do you walk that line?
Yeah, I think that was such an important consideration. And, you know, first of all, it's whose hands is the storytelling in? And again, I'll just go back to saying with these three creators, we knew that there was going to be a deftness and a care and a consideration and a love that went into the work, right? And I think by really, first of all, thinking about our reader from a place of respecting them, so you want to tell them the truth, and loving them, you don't want to hurt them. Those two things are really central. And Renée and Nikole were always going to do that. One of the things I will, that I really marveled at, and this was just, you know, it was from the very beginning, from the first draft that they sent in. This is something they probably discussed so much in their own work before I even saw the manuscript, was how much of the storytelling is set and based on and housed in joy. So even when you look at the book, there's spread after spread after spread after spread before you even reach the Americas, right? And to have all of this physical space in this object that sort of, you know, you can feel like the first third is taken up with pages that are about celebrating culture and language and relationships and humanity. And that's all joyfulness, was both important, I think, tonally, because one, it is an important counteract, like a counterbalance to so many narratives around slavery that we've heard for children or otherwise. And two, it was just a way of saying, we're actually focusing on these communities and these people in their full humanity before the story of slavery even enters the picture, before they are stolen. And so I think that did a lot to really address the tone, because it was actually, it's almost like a question of ratios. It is a different ratio than I've seen in other books. And that does something very powerful. That's one thing. The other is, there is just, there's an honesty to the way that Nikole and Renée write. You know, they don't shy away from things, but there's no need to sensationalize. They understand that a child can hear a truth in a way that is plain, and that the impact and brutality of that will land. But also, I think both of them have spoken so thoughtfully about how they wanted to create a book so that a young Black reader could have an origin story they're proud of. And this sense of sort of pride and of giving them a gift really, I think, undergirds all of the storytelling. And when there is that sense of giving a gift, I think it really manages that tone well, because the primary reader, the reader in their mind, is a young Black child, a young Black American child. And that's really powerful. And then I think with the other piece of the tone, and this is where I'll want to hear more from Nikkolas, is that sense of balancing joyfulness and experiences that are really, really traumatic and brutal in art that is so joyful, but also really sensitively manages the spreads that are dark. I mean, we've talked about this, I think, in other talks, Nikkolas, the way you handle pages that are physically dark and you'll illuminate faces in ways that are so intimate. So even when there's real darkness, there's always like a centering of humanity, and there's a great intimacy for it. So maybe you can just jump in there.
Yeah. Talk a bit about it, Nikkolas. And I have some questions, because there are some choices that you make that I think are just really brilliant. I think because I think people forget, like, the artists, these are choices, right? This person is making choices. This person is making choices, thinking about the context, thinking about the text that he or she or they may have, and also making choices thinking about the reader that perhaps might be reading said text. And so the same question as Namrata was bringing up, like, I guess I'm just want to know, like, what's your process in terms of figuring out how to walk that line? Because really the real trauma can come from you, right? Like that's the truth, right? If you get this wrong, this could be really rough. And so how did you make certain decisions? And I want to bring up one example. I'll just say really quickly and I'll let you talk. But my example is when you talk about captured Africans who decide that they don't want to be slaves. And so we know the story of people jumping off the boat. And so you don't actually show a body in the water, but you do show the water sort of silhouetting a body, right? But those are two very different things, you know what I mean? And so just thinking about those choices, can you just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that, and I have seen, I've seen and heard horror stories of that going wrong. And it's just like always in the back of my mind, it's like, don't be that person. Like, don't end up as that story. And yeah, it's like, I don't know. What I keep saying is that as I'm reading these poems from Nikole and Renée, I'm just like, I just have to internalize what I just read. And that's part of the thing about the speed painting that I do, is like, whatever I'm feeling after what I just saw on the news or what I just read or whatever, I just like put all that emotion into a speed sketch. And like I was saying, like a lot of the speed sketches that I did for this book end up looking quite a bit like the final, because it's part of just like my immediate reaction to what I just read. And so I will show really quickly that one that you just mentioned.
Beautiful.
And one of it's one of the heaviest spreads in the whole book. But one thing that people tell me is that, like, they'll say, like, you bring a beauty to the tragedy. I don't want it to just be like purely tragic, like it. There's something to, and this is a debate or a topic that we talk about a lot in the Black community, is like, those who were enslaved, who decided that they didn't want to keep going on, and the on one side, the beauty of freeing yourself, but also on, like, literally right on the next page, the beauty of those who decided that they were going to, not die and continue on and make something out of nothing. And I'm so glad that they did, because if they didn't, I wouldn't be here right now. So man, like there's some heavy topics that I was just like, I hope people understand what I'm trying to visualize here. And there's other pages where it's just like, it may be dark, but there's always light. There is always something, at the end saying, like, just keep moving on. I know it's dark right now, but keep moving on. One of the special things about this spread is that, there's actually like, there's like this red, black, and green element. Mm-hmm. And it's like the juxtaposition of liberation and slavery at the same time.
Can you show really quickly while you have this up? Can you show the spread of the ship? Powerful.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let me see.
Like that spread, I think, is a powerful image, because I think that, like, because when you guys see it, when he pulls it up, there are no words on this page, and we're forced to just reckon with the magnitude.
Yeah, one of the heaviest one of the heaviest spreads, I will say. Let me drag it onto the screen really quick for you guys.
For everyone who's watching and listening, please put your questions in the Q&A box. We're going to get to them in just a moment. We want to make sure that we answer as many as possible. But I love this spread. I mean, it's hard to say I love it because I know what it means, right? But I do love it. One, as a piece of art. Like, first of all, as a piece of art, right? I think it is. Yeah. I think it is really, honestly, though it's nasty in my mouth, I think it's exquisite, to be honest with you. That being said, I also like the fact that you all left it stark. Let us live with the fact that this image, this vehicle, right, is something that would change the lives of an entire culture, right, forever. And there's something about sort of forcing us to kind of just live with that for a second. Just live with that. No words, nothing to read, just a stark image of a massive vehicle that would shift the trajectory of millions of people. And
you just have to sit and live with this moment in time. Again, I kind of give elements of a little bit of the hope that is behind, a little bit of the sunlight on the right side, the sunset or sunrise, the coldness on the left. You see a lot of the motifs, like I was mentioning, the motif of death, a lot of X's everywhere. The ship itself is very grotesque. It's almost like there's a hidden face in here of like just mean and just nasty, and it's like a living death machine thing. That those types of things where like I want to show the severity of the situation without like just making it too tragic.
There's a nuance and an inference, you know what I mean, that I think you do just a really good job at. All right, I have another. I know we're running out of time. I have so many questions.
I'll say one more thing about that piece of art too, Jason, that's interesting is like, even when we were cropping and figuring out how to do it, we had conversations about pulling back a teensy bit so that you would see a little bit more underwater and that you get the full hull of the ship and what that would mean, and to be able to make that visible in that sort of semi-opaque water, but just to have that on that page. So I think all of the choices that Nikkolas made around this spread, that the art director did, everything was very intentional.
It's really, when I got to that spread, it was just really striking, really striking. And it's brilliant. My next question, and I know please put your questions in the Q&A. We're going to get to them very, very shortly. I want to talk about, because at the beginning, Namrata, you talk about like the first third is sort of this, it's almost like this manifesto of joy, right? It's like, here we are, this is who we are. But the very first 2 pages are not that, right? The first 2 pages of this book are actually something that I think that young people deal with all the time, and that we don't talk enough about, which is the shame that comes. I remember being in school and we have like, culture day or something, and everybody's like, you come in, everybody's like, oh, I'm from Pakistan, or I'm from, my people are from Beijing, or my people, right? And it's like, and I have all this, here's my food, here's my, and it's like, I'm from down the street. Like, like this is all I got, right? I'm from around the corner. And the shame of not knowing anything past 6 generations, right? For me and my family. And I think this was just an incredible moment of honesty that needed to be said. Like, this is how a lot of Black American children, specifically descendants of chattel slavery, feel in moments in school where they don't know their stories, right? And so I guess I just want you to talk about just this particular part of the book, this process, or even what it was like for you to read this the first time. I mean, like you said, right? You are of Indian descent, Indian American, right? Like, what is it like for you to have to sort of grapple with this as an editor, and making choices, right? Because I think this is the very first. I mean, page 1 and 2, right? This is what we're getting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think, again, Nikole and Renée were so thoughtful about how to take the original essay that Nikole wrote in the New York Times Magazine when the 1619 Project first debuted, and find a way to give young readers, really readers of all ages, but centering young readers, an entry point into that conversation. And it was really the 2 of them who thought about what is a framework that could be possible for finding our way in. And they both, I mean, I asked them later, you know, did you have this assignment? Did you have this experience? Because I mean, I'm an American now, but I didn't actually even grow up in the United States. So I never, you know what I mean? Like,
Pardon me, yeah.
I didn't even have that, that kind of, I mean, you know, even in my experience, we had the sort of culture days, and the things you talk about does feel familiar. And I think grappling with the experience of Black Americans when it's told to sort of say like, what, you know, where does your story begin, and not having an answer was something that I've only really thought about as I've come to understand my own experience as a new American, and then working on projects like this, which help sort of sharpen your mind and your empathy to the experience of everyone around you too. And it was really Renée and Nikole thinking about their own childhoods, understanding that this is experience that, I mean, I think Nikole maybe had said she had this experience. Renée says, you know, it wasn't quite something that should happen to her, but you know, so many kids to whom this exact experience does happen, and wanting to give that gift to the young girls that they were, right, to themselves as a child. And so there's the one piece which kind of like speaks to the approach to the work that they always bring, that all three of the creators bring, that sort of centering of sort of heart, empathy, respect, and really thinking about what the experience is for a young child reading this, a young Black child reading this. And then there's a second piece of it that I think is really smart, which is creating a structural framework that allows the translating of an essay that was intended in a very different form for a very different reader, and being able to bring it into a 32-page picture book intended for someone who is probably not reading the New York Times Magazine, you know? And so I think for me, I found it to be a really pretty brilliant approach, because it was structurally a great framing device, and then a kind of tonally, and in terms of like the heart and impact of the book, seeing very clearly what's at stake from the first page. I think that's brilliant. And again, going back to the thing of wanting to tell the truth, not shying away from it, to say, I'm going to put a child today experiencing what they experience today, and then tying it through 400 years. So there's no ambiguity about this is a thing that happened a long time ago and doesn't touch us now. I thought that was really impactful, and I kind of like the way it gave us an opportunity to bring it back at the end.
Absolutely.
And create a sense of hopefulness. You'll see that on the last poem. Initially, there was no punctuation at all. The last poem ended with no punctuation. And I remember asking them, I said, I'm assuming this is on purpose, as everything is, because the story continues, and it is a way of saying this is not an end point. But also it's the kind of thing that maybe to a reader, will it signal that right away, or will they be like, where the hell is the last punctuation? Right. This is a typo. And so we ended up with an ellipses, because it's a much more direct way of saying the story continues. But these are the kinds of conversations we're having, and I feel like that's my role as an editor, come in to say, I believe this is your intention. How do I make sure we put on the page so our intended reader gets it? But the framing of it was them entirely, and I was blown away by it.
I was just really happy that, I think that we find freedom and liberation through the language. And so for me, it just meant the world for it to be named in that first or second page, to say that, to have her say, I feel ashamed. Yes. Right? Because I think we try to skirt it and we try to dance around it. We try to find other language for it, but that's the word for it, right? And to give that to the young people who read this, who are trying to figure out what the word is, that they like, how to name the feeling, how to name that thing, and to say like, no, because look, Black folks got a whole thing about like, you don't got to feel shame, you don't need to feel ashamed, but I do, right? And so like, I think it's just a service and a gift to young people, and a love letter to say it's okay for us to name these things. It's not your fault, but it's important that we know how to name this strange, almost ephemeral. It almost feels like an abstract emotion inside the body, because when you're that age, you don't know. It's like I don't know why I feel small, but I feel really small in this moment. And to give that to a young person, I think is just an extraordinary gift. All right, we got a few questions. I have more questions. Audience members, if you slacking on your questions, don't worry about it. I got a whole lot, but we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. Let's see. Here we go from Rita. Rita is asking about the age group, but let's get it. Let me ask you straight up and down, because we have classifications in the industry. What is the age group? If you had to The actual classification. We know it's for everyone, but what's the actual classification?
I'm trying to think about like, what is it that we like fed out? Because usually there's like bands that are there, and I'm not actually even sure. Maybe it's like 5 to 9. It might've been like the band that we get because that's how Bookstore will file it.
Right.
You know, I don't think this is someone says 7 to 10. Okay, 7 to 10. See, I don't even know. I'm the editor. I like what Nikkolas says, right? Which is 5 to 105. I'm standing by it.
There you go. That's what I'm with too. 5 to 105.
Or younger.
Or exactly. Whoever, listen, whoever got ears and eyes, you know what I mean? It's for you. If you above ground, this is a book for you. Yeah. Fiona asks, Mr. Smith, how did you do this advanced type of design for Born on the Water?
Well, like I was saying, that I create speed paintings. I have my Wacom tablet. It is my best friend. I have a pen, and it's just like drawing on an iPad. But what I love to do is I create semi-abstract, like oil paintings, almost. Like I want them to feel like oil paintings, even though they're digital. So a lot of times, people will like ask me for, the original to a piece that I've done. It's a JPEG, or I can send you the PDF. So yeah, it's all here. And like I said, internalizing the poems when I read them, and just like put out what I feel. And I try to put as much, motion and feeling and heart into, what's inside, and just like put it out there. Yeah, so
that's what's up. I mean, it's advanced because he's probably, how long have you been doing this?
Oh, wow. 8 years of doing one Sunday sketch every Sunday for the past 8 years.
And so it's advanced because he's practiced, right? This is literally a long time. There's a story about Keith Haring, that Keith Haring's father would make him draw comics with his eyes closed over and over and over. His father was an artist too. They would make him draw like the same comics over and over again, because he told them that, like, above all, the one thing you'll need better than everything else is your hand, and to be able to make the stroke confidently, because you already know, what to do. Like you just did with the horn, right? You're like, oh yeah, you just do like this, whoop, whoop, whoop. Right? And we're all like, oh, like, you know what I mean? So Fiona, if you are a young person, something tells me that you are. And if you are a young person, it's just practice.
And then right. Jason, the point you just made about like you get so confident with your line, with your hand, is one of those things that like is so apparent to anyone who sees the work, then, in the way that like when we read a line of text by someone who's writing, well, you can recognize their voice. When there's an artist, so often I'll be like, oh, I could sometimes see, if you took like a couple of artists that I know well and they just draw a straight line, I could tell you whose line it is, because you know the signature of their impression. And that is so powerful. And I think that's a big part of it, probably, Nikkolas, is not just that you get good at the work, but that you really excavate your own line in it. You kind of get really good expressing who you are on the page versus anyone else.
Your voice. This is your voice. You know what I mean? It's an amazing thing. Okay, Sharon says, also Nikkolas, she's saying the speed sketching is amazing. Most of us couldn't do that if we took out, couldn't do it. Nikkolas, is this your preferred way of creating art? What do you like about it? That there's light and hope even in the darkest illustrations. And she says you're so incredible.
Thank you.
You're all right. Listen, let me tell you something. You're all right.
This is my preferred way of making art. I would say when I was really young, I did not have like sketchbooks full of art, like sketches and stuff, because I think I was kind of a little bit afraid of it being perfect or not being perfect. And so that's a lot of the whole start of this 8 years of Sunday sketches was, for me, it's art as therapy. It's making art really just to, uplift myself. And it ended up being like art that uplifts other people. But part of that was just not being afraid to just put the art out there. And, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. I don't really, like, even as I was making this book, it's like, it's not about it being perfect. It's really just like my Sunday sketch series, like, just get the feeling, get the emotion on the page. And once it's at a point where I feel like people will get it and it's done, you know? It's not about like the exact perfect clean line. I don't like clean lines. It's semi-abstract, it's sketchy, it's dirty, it's messy. And so yeah, that's the way that I do it. And I think that's the most helpful for me. And I try to encourage people, anybody, all of you, like everybody is creative. Everybody has creativity. And I just encourage people to just like, whenever you can, throw paint on a canvas. And I do like, you know, I do like throwing actual paint on a canvas every now and then. So that's a great, you know, therapeutic outlet also.
That's what's up. Namrata, I'll be looking to see your painting soon. Just so
I
you
was
know.
just about to make the same joke.
No,
Jason.
no.
Both of you have
Get some
homework.
drinks. We're gonna get some
I'd
candy.
like to see it. You know what I mean? Very soon. I'll be checking for yours.
Good.
Sharon has a follow-up question and just says, basically, well, let me read it out. Also, I love having the backstory to the art. Is there back matter that talks about the symbolism with the X's on the boat? I'm taking copious notes, but not everyone gets to hear all this incredible information. That's a good question.
Yeah, so I was able to, in the illustrator's notes in the back of the book, explain a little bit about the motifs of life, death, and rebirth. But honestly, I feel like this could be like a whole talk, like a whole 3-hour, 4-hour talk, really, where I go through all, because there's a bunch of motifs like all throughout. There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of things that you just have to sit with the book for an hour or two, and like, you know, there's this character that matches to the, you know, oh, this character from the beginning of the book is on the slave ship, and you know, there's the little doll made out of grass that you can kind of barely see in page 5 that, oh, now you see, you know, in the stolen spread fully. And a lot of pieces just like match together, but you have to like read the book 5-10 times.
I have, so I'm going to ask these last 2 questions, and I'm going to ask my last obligatory question that I ask everyone, and everybody gets the same question. This next question is for you, Namrata. It's from someone. It could be Basil, it could be Basil, it could be Basil. So I am so sorry, young person, because I know they're a young person because they said comments. I am a young person. Who inspires you the most, Namrata?
Oh my gosh.
This is a great. I'm so happy. I can't wait to hear this.
In my work, who inspires me the most?
Who inspires you the most? I don't know. Maybe.
As you can see, I'm like a deer in headlights with this question, because first of all, I don't feel like as an editor, our whole job is to sort of be quietly invisible. So to be asked a question like this.
So I'm so happy.
I mean, I will say this, and I hope this is not like one of those cop-out answers, but this is true, and this is why I think I do this work and why I'm able to keep doing it, because sometimes, I mean, Jason, you've been in this industry a long time too. Sometimes it's hard to keep doing it. I was going to say sometimes, but I feel like for me, very regularly, because everyone I get to work with is everyone I choose to work with now, because now, you know, I started this imprint and this is what we get to do. The creators I work with are so incredible. And that when I'm like when I'm deep on working on a project, and I realize like how thoughtful they are about the work, the layers they're putting into it, the sort of humanity they bring to it, what we're actually trying to do, I feel like I'm inspired. I'm inspired by like every creator I work with when I work with them, because they teach me something and they kind of force me to be better. And that's incredible to come back to each day. It's sort of I think every project I work on helps sharpen me for the next project I work on. I think like I am the product of all of these incredible authors and illustrators I've come in contact with. I mean, I feel that way with my team and colleagues, but I know for all of us as editors, it's really about how we interface with you guys in the creative work. So I would say, I mean, I think it's my authors and illustrators who like allow us to work on these beautiful things that they make and somehow make them better. It makes me realize like, this is how you work in collaboration. This is how you shine a light on someone else's work. It's like a kind of a great mission to get to have every day.
Yeah, that's not a cop-out. I think that's a dope answer. That's what's up. Okay, last question before my last question is from Nikole. She says, they say, I wish I had this book as a child. I think the way we first learned about the enslaved people in America shapes our relationship to shame and joy. I felt shame for a long time, and only as an adult, wanting to learn more, have I discovered joy and pride. How can we spread this joy to those still weighed down with shame, especially when they say, I don't want to read books about slavery or struggle, which is a whole thing right now in our community. Nikkolas, you know this, that like people are like, I don't want to see no more movies about slavery. I don't want to read no more books about slavery. Why we only got to read about it? Right? Why do I got to keep reliving this? What do you say? How can we spread this joy to those that still feel weighed down with shame?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about the book is that it starts before the whips and chains and all of that. And yes, it does have, slavery is a huge part of it, but I think having that intro that is very joyful and very, full of pride, I think that's a great intro for anybody who's feeling like I can't see any more of it. Because it's almost like that thing where, you have some bad news and like you slip it in the middle of like the good news is on the ends, and like, the bad news is in the middle, and you try to, make it a little easier to digest. And it's just like, it's kind of how the book is, where it's like, just have people start at the beginning, and they will go through the tough part. But there's joy and hope, towards the end, and it's a brighter day on the other side, so that is hopeful for me. And I remember, like, Barry Jenkins was talking about that too, his Underground series, which is phenomenal, and it's very hard, and
Especially episode 1.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like that, where it's like, I can't see any more pain, but like sometimes you just got to see it. Like sometimes you just, you need to see it.
And also, perspective is important, right? Perspective is important. There are people who see, like, I think about this all. Very quick. Actually, don't worry about it. I think about this with death. When we lose loved ones, we say we feel a tremendous hole in our lives. But the truth is that anytime a hole is dug, if you turn around, there will be a mountain behind you, right? So like we get to sort of choose, what do we focus on, the hole or the mountain, right? And I think for me, when I hear these stories, I feel 10 feet tall.
That's right.
10 feet tall, right? I am a product of survivors and fighters, people who could sustain and be, right? I feel like I am impenetrable. I know that I am, right? But I feel like a giant 99% of the time. And I think that's just about just a slight shift of perspective.
Yeah.
I think they put it in the book too, in the way that it very explicitly talks about resistance. If there's joy, there is struggle, but then there's resistance. And I think that framing or acknowledgement seems really powerful too, I imagine.
All right, my last question is for the both of you. I've asked everyone this. I think I've probably asked Renee this before. Nikole, everybody has gotten this question. And both of you have to answer. Look back to your 10-year-old selves, all the way back to 10-year-old Namrata and 10-year-old Nikkolas. And think back to 10-year-old you, and what would you thank 10-year-old you for now?
What would I thank 10-year-old?
What would you thank 10? Absolutely.
Lovely question.
I would thank 10-year-old me for not quitting, basically not quitting when every time I, pulled out a pencil and tried to draw something and it looked terrible and just like, I was, ready to do something else, and just like trying it again and being willing to fail a million times, and getting to the point where I honestly still feel like I suck at art. All artists feel like this at some point. And still, yeah. And it's just like, I feel like, but one of the things is I feel like I'm at a point where I've drawn it incorrectly so many times that I know a little bit better, like what not to draw. And so it ends up looking decent to people. And I'm like, great. it still doesn't look as good as I wanted to, but you know, my 10-year-old self didn't quit, so I'm not gonna quit now. So
Word up.
I'm so glad your 10-year-old self didn't quit. I'm also thanking Nikkolas's 10-year-old self for that.
As a
Because look at this beautiful book we got. What would I thank my 10-year-old self for? I think someone told me that, because I have a daughter who's like about to turn 10 in a couple of months. She's totally listening in from the other room right now, I can tell. And she, you know, they told me that when your kids are growing up and they go through that difficult period when they're like preteens or whatever, remember they're going to go back to being who they are at 10, because that's kind of who you really are inside. And I've been thinking about that because I think the 10-year-old me like felt the world very deeply, like kind of at that time when I was 10, I was in Pakistan. I was an Indian living in Pakistan. It's just its own complicated thing. But you know, you think a lot about like your place in the world. You have a real sense of like justice and injustice, I guess, is the other piece of it, which can be really hard because you feel so deeply. And I know now that I'm kind of just the same still, right? Like in my 40s, I'm that girl. And it's hard to live with a heart like that, I think, but I'm grateful for it. I think I'm glad that she still exists in me. You know, that's kind of what I thank her for, like persisting, because it makes you kind of more available to the world in a way.
Absolutely. We're all grateful for both of your 10-year-old selves. At least I am. Very much so. I appreciate y'all joining me for this. Everyone who's listening and who has joined us, we are grateful for Nikole Hannah-Jones. We are grateful for my dear friend Renée Watson. We are grateful for the young legend Nicholas Smith. And I hope you all, like I said before, I'm not playing, by the way. Like you know, you gotta buy the book. Like you have to spend your money. Buy the book. Buy a few copies. This is an important document for our families, for our babies, for our elders, for our OGs. This is a moment of American history. I mean, the actual publication of this book is a moment in American history. You don't want to not be a part of it. Get down with it. Be better. Texas, be better. I love y'all, but like, stop censoring us. It just has to be said. I'm sorry. It just has to be said.
Texas, come on, Texas.
Come on. But I love y'all. Greenlight, y'all gonna come back on and say goodnight? They probably already bounced on us. Oh, here they come.
No, thank you all so much for this amazing conversation. It just makes this amazing book even more amazing to hear about the process behind it. And thank you everyone who attended tonight. I dropped the buy link in the chat for the book. If you don't have it already, buy one for everyone you know. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Namrata. Thank you, Nikkolas. This has been so amazing.
Isha.
Thank you all. It was so great to see you guys.
Thank you guys.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.